on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Welcome to the program. It's O'Connor and Company. I am not Larry O'Connor because I'm not sitting on a beach somewhere sipping Mai Tais. That's right, I'm Derek Hunter sitting in for a vacationing. Larry O'Connor sitting across from Mercedes Schlapp sitting in on the company today. How are you, Mercedes?
Good morning. I am not Larry O'Connor either.
You sure?
God,
His video feed looks... Maybe it's one of those faces that they put on it. You got like the cat ear things that everybody does. But yeah, I'll believe you that you're not Larry O'Connor. But boy, howdy, do we have an action-packed program for you today here on WMAL. 7:05, we're going to be joined by Ben Weingarten. 7:35, Ginny Gentles. And then the great Tom Bevan at 8:35 from Real Clear. Two Real Clear people. This is, I was planning on muddying up the show today, but now it's got to be real clear. I'll show myself out. Oh, man. Okay, so Mercedes, I've got to go right to your area of expertise and your time in the White House. You worked in the West Wing. What did you do with your cocaine when you went to work?
Right. I was going to say my time at the White House, we weren't doing cocaine. I'm so sorry. This seems to be very different.
So you just did it on the weekends? You did it on the weekends? Well, you only did it on the weekends? Like, I don't know.
Please, no. No. I know I'm from Miami, but come on. The Miami Vice days are over. But Derek, let me ask you this.
We still have the pastel suits, and we all know.
We do like the pastel suits.
That doesn't make it right.
You're literally like, you know too much. So, Derek, I was.
That's never something you want to hear from. You know too much. No. Never works out well for the guy who knows too much.
Well, I gotta say, when I heard the story about the cocaine in the White House, first of all, you're going through the motions of, okay, wait a second. So how did it even get in there? Because you got to go, obviously, through the security. You literally are supposed to take everything out of your pockets, which it has to go through the scanner. And then you get into the White House, and then you got to drop off your cell phone. Oh, and by the way, let me drop off my cocaine, too, while I'm at it, and put it inside the cubby. So it really, you got to ask yourself, okay, it was folks that were going in through the West Wing. It was individuals that could have been White House staff or guests of the White House staff that they think, oh, maybe it's the trans topless person who was at the White House who might have dropped it off in the cubby and forgot about it. And then, not understanding the fact that the horrible repercussions that come with, like, literally having an illicit drug in the White House. And then the Secret Service, it sounds like, Derek, they are like, well, it might be too tough to figure out who it is.
They have a very defeatist attitude, and the media is like, oh, all right, well, there you go. We may never know who it is. Well, it's amazing how you might never find out what you don't try to find out. It's exactly weird. But I have a theory that I'm formulating now. So if you've ever been to Costco, and I'm not talking about smuggling cocaine being the same as going to Costco, although there are similarities because you feel like you're on drugs sometimes when you're at Costco. But I always take my card out and show them because you got a secret membership
show
flash
them the
thing.
card.
And instead of putting it back in my wallet because you're going to need it at the end, I stick it in my pocket. And sometimes it's my pocket with my cell phone.
Okay.
And sometimes it sticks to the back of the cell phone, friction, whatever it is. So if you are inclined to have cocaine in your pocket in a little baggie that, a little stereotype baggie that you see at the hardware stores, and you're like, nobody's putting nails in these little tiny bags. Everybody knows why these baggies exist. And it's not because the big bad hardware guy with the calloused hands is putting penny nails in a tiny little bag that holds maybe 10 of them. It's strictly for cocaine. And it might stick to the back of the phone, and then you put your phone in there. That's about the only way I could think. And then it came off when you took your phone off, and you didn't remember that your blow was in there, and maybe it stayed in that way. But what I find amazing, Mercedes, is this, the rooms themselves in the West Wing aren't covered in surveillance cameras, but the hallways are, the corridors are.
Yes.
So this area, they say, well, it's heavily trafficked. It could have been anybody, people throwing things in and out of there. Of course, of a day, there's maybe 15, 20 people who use a particular cubby. Mm-hmm. You can see which person is using which cubby. If you really wanted to know, and since it is one of the most heavily secure areas on the planet Earth, and to get in there, you have to have just short of a colonoscopy, you could say, well, these 15 people used this cubby. We're going to need some blood and some urine or some hair. We could find out whose cocaine it likely was, in addition to the fact that it's a plastic bag and there's likely at least a partial fingerprint. They could find out if they wanted to, I would think, because once you go into the West Wing, you don't suddenly get to say, look, I'm not going to participate. You're subject to all the rules of a highly secure area, right? You don't.
Right.
So if they want you to take a drug test, you can't say, well, I refuse to do that. I'll talk to the union or something like that. That's not how it works.
Right. And what I find intriguing is that if this would be the Trump White House, and this would have been the case, the media would have been all over it and trying to determine who in the Trump White House is the one that owned the cocaine and dig deeper. This is, I mean, I was watching the CNN segment, Derek. They were laughing. They thought it was a big deal. They're the ones that sounded drunk on TV, trying to say, oh, it's an illicit drug, like kind of laughing about it. And here you are that, think about it. If you get caught on the streets with cocaine, you'll be thrown into jail. It's like, and here you have the cocaine, which, think about it. If cocaine got through the White House, what about anthrax? What about these other type of hazardous substances out there that could easily get into the White House? And then the Secret Service is saying, wait a second, this is going to be a challenging investigation, which then poses a question, well, do they have enough security in the White House? I remember during 9/11, we were in the old executive office building, and we didn't have like emergency sound systems, like saying, get out, run out of the White House. No, it was Secret Service running down the hallway to say, get out of the White House. So this raises a serious question, too. How much security do they have in the White House that they can't even figure out with the cameras, with the entrance logs, that they're saying this is going to be a challenging investigation?
Well, there's a possibility.
Not that many people actually go to the White House.
No.
It's not like you're going to a sports event.
No, and I got a tour of the West Wing at the waning days of the Bush administration because a friend of mine worked there. But you can get a tour of the East Wing, the general public areas. Are there ways for the general public without knowing somebody to get a tour of the West Wing, or is it?
Yes.
There are?
Yes. So you would normally be able to, and on the week, usually you would do these tours on the weekends or after hours, I would say like after 7 p.m. And you could, you basically would put in the information you would log in their information, which you would normally do.
But you had to know somebody,
come in through
right?
this.
It's not like you can just sign up for it. It's not. There's
no,
not.
No. It would have to be someone who works in the White House, and then you're like, okay, Mercy, I want to go to the White House with you, and I'd say, okay, Derek, come join me. So then I'll log you in with your information. They know exactly where you're entering, so they'll know which gate you're going into, because you have to let them in through the certain gate, Northwest gate or Southwest, depending on which gate. Then you walk in through that gate. Now, what's interesting to me is that during the weekends, if you are doing a tour, I don't remember that you would have to put your cell phone in the cubby. I think you just kind of would walk in.
Mine was in
it was a little more casual.
2008, December or January of 2008, 2009. I don't know that they had that then.
No, they didn't have the cubbies came into being with Trump.
The iPhone was invented yet, so there was no walking around taking video of it. But nowadays, you get checked everything, and the security check is not like. It's not like at the Reagan building where the metal detectors, you pretty much have to be a Terminator to set off the metal detectors because you have to have a ton of metal on you or whatever. It's more closely like going into the Capitol or going to Reagan National, where they are very thorough, check your pockets, pat you down. Metal, if you leave a nickel in your penny loafers, the thing goes off and you've got to go back through and they'll wand you. So it's not like you could casually forget something in your pocket. They make you
no,
turn
there's no.
out.
And like if you think about it, that goodness, maybe they should just take the TSA and just, instead of annoying the passengers, just annoy the
well,
the
it's really we got
staff.
passengers stabbing each other on planes, so it's not exactly what the TSA
Now
in charge of much of anything.
I will say I want to talk about like one of the theories. So if you're a commissioned officer, so for example, if you were an assistant to the president, or I was talking to Mark Morgan, like a commissioned officer from Homeland Security or any of the departments, you literally can drive your car into the main parking lot, which is the one next to the East Wing, the old executive office and the West Wing, and you don't have to get magged or checked, or they don't check your personal belongings.
And
so that's a really important point.
I
because
assume
you
the
could,
same is for family members. We're talking about the cocaine thing. Mercedes, hold that thought.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you about family members, about that in a second. But it is already 5:15 a.m. That means we take a check of traffic and weather together. First on the fives with Jamie Whitten in the
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
The left is very good at protesting, Mercedes Schlapp, and the right needs to get more creative at this. We need a Lloyd Dobler moment. We need protesters in trench coats like they're Lloyd Dobler, like they're John Cusack and Say Anything, standing outside the White House with boom boxes over their head, simulcasting Cocaine by Eric Clapton until we get to the bottom of this. Where
Derek, I see you. I envision you doing this. I mean,
used to fancy
could
myself Lloyd Dobler, but now I fancy myself not standing out in 90-degree weather with a boombox over my head. This is a younger man's game. This is a minimum wage kid's game. This is somebody that only does this when they want to get their foot in the door. And over at CPAC, you guys have those people. Get them out there. Get some
we are those people.
Yeah, get the boomboxes.
We are
out
those
there.
people.
I'll come down and
I
take
know.
pictures, but I won't. But yeah, just imagine a whole bunch of people holding up cocaine boom boxes as they blast down there. I think that's the way to go.
You're going to laugh, but I was talking to one of our CPAC folks, and they're like, I'm going to go out in front of the White House and basically make sure that Biden recognizes his granddaughter. Say her name. That's what they want to do. So you're right. They are going to go out to the White House.
Half the time, Joe Biden doesn't recognize the guys whose face he's shaving in the morning. So I don't think he's going to recognize a 4-year-old he's never seen and denied the existence of and can't even bring himself to put a stocking up. Speaking of degenerates, when the family comes to visit the President of the United States, they don't have to get the Secret Service treatment, do they? I mean, you can go visit your dad, and it's kind of assumed that you're not going to try to kill him, right?
Yeah, I would wonder, though, if Hunter, I guess the question would be, did Hunter go meet with his father and go through the West Wing, right? Or did Hunter go to the residence to
Is there a separate entrance for the residence?
Yeah, there's separate entries. There's separate entries.
Okay.
So there's one that's like in between the old executive office and the West Wing. Then there's another one that takes you into pretty much into the East Wing and the kind of the residence area, or the front part of the White House, which, again, Hunter wouldn't have to go through a screening because he's just driving the car in.
Well,
so
President Trump weighed in on this over at Truth Social, which is like Twitter Lite. Now there's another new Twitter.
Now there's Zuckerberg Twitter. What is that about?
I don't know. I'm trying to look up.
I don't have that many thoughts. I don't think I
threads.
can join that one.
Yeah, give me one portal to do it all, and then I'll do it all. I don't know how these kids today. I feel like an old man. I want to go yell at somebody to get off my lawn, but I don't know how these kids today keep up with all these different apps. President Trump said, does anybody really believe that cocaine, and it was all in caps, cocaine, so he's serious, found in the West Wing of the White House, very close to the Oval Office, is for the use of anyone other than Hunter and Joe Biden? Still accusing the president of doing some booger sugar. But watch, the fake news media will soon start saying that the amount found was very small and wasn't really cocaine, but rather common ground up aspirin, and the story will vanish. I don't think that they'll do that. I think that they'll just ignore it. That's what the media does. One day they said, hey, your son just pleaded guilty to tax evasion for not filing taxes for a couple of years and gun crimes. You sure you'd never talked to him about his businesses? And Karine Jean-Pierre said, we're not talking about this. I'm not talking. And then by the Monday afterwards, they said, oh, that old story. And they moved on. They just kind of checked the box. You as former communications director, it's the exact, I'd say you know how that works, but you don't know how that works because they doggedly pursued you every day until they got an answer or just made one up. But in this White House, it is, we're going to ask a question. If we don't get an answer, we just kind of go, well, we tried.
Yeah, I have to say, Karine Jean-Pierre, talk about dodging every single question. She's able to say, well, we're not going to address this, or like in the case, this is what the Secret Service, it's up to the Secret Service, or I refer you to the Secret Service. This is what they do. She's been able to dodge every one of these difficult questions. And to your point, Derek, the media, the liberal media, the leftist media, they just move on. They don't make it into a big deal.
No.
They really want to make it into this narrative that poor Hunter Biden, he's a drug addict, and there's this father-son relationship, and Joe Biden is such a great father, and you just want to be like, oh, the double standard. When it
Well, I'm
was
not sure a
Donald
great
Trump, they
father
wanted to
raises 2 or 3
demonize
kids.
every single one of his kids. They wanted to demonize him. And to tell you how the media was so aggressive and so nasty during that time, not all of them. Some of them were fair journalists, but the vast majority of those leftist media, just one attack after the other in the Trump White House.
Wouldn't you love to get a look at Karine Jean-Pierre, KJP? So historic, so historic. Wouldn't you love to see her 3-ring binder? I imagine it's like 80 pages of just like Jack Nicholson or in The Shining, all work and no play makes Johnny a dull boy. All it says is, I'm not going to comment on this.
I'm not going to comment.
80 pages with different tabs, and on each single one of them, I'm not going to comment on this. And then you get to the end, and it's like, yeah, Republicans are terrible. Like that's,
Yeah,
that's,
exactly.
that's all it says.
Wait. No, it's MAGA Republicans. It's
That's ultra
extreme
MAGA.
Let's get the wording right, Derek.
Ultra MAGA. I mean, hey,
Yes,
you got to go up to
exactly.
super ultra mega. Maybe we should get out in front of that and copyright super ultra MAGA before it's too late, before they start using it, and then just by proxy get the copyright on that, because I don't know where we go from here. It is absolutely insane, but it's amazing what a difference a letter after a name makes, isn't it? I always have this theory that there's the R, and then there's the D, but that if you look closely, that D in the parentheses is a tiny little shield. And it's not really a D, it's just that got the handle and then the bowed shield, and it deflects everything. Personal responsibility goes the way of the dodo, and it's like the I wasn't even in town that month administration when you have a D after your name. You can get away with
Well, the problem is
everything.
no one's holding them accountable. No one.
No.
And they're letting the Department of Justice run wild, and the target when the focus will be going after conservatives is what
And
they
you
do,
win a
and going
Pulitzer
after
for
Trump.
it. That's the amazing thing is right now there are a whole bunch of plaques at the engravers for awards for these people for sitting on their butts doing absolutely nothing. I have seen, bots with more personality and more curiosity. You'll never know what you can't find when you don't look for it, and that seems to be the mantra of journalism these days. Good Lord, it is already 5:25, and since we do traffic and weather together every 10 minutes, first on the fives, we go again and poke the bear. James. Welcome back to O'Connor and Company. Derek Hunter sitting in with Mercedes Schlapp as Larry sits in on vacation. Mercedes, you referenced earlier the CNN laughing, joking, giggling, gits and shiggles, as they might say, attitude towards finding cocaine in one of the most secure areas on the planet. Let's listen to them giggle like schoolgirls about it. Cut 3, go ahead.
Right, it is intriguing. Priscilla Alvarez, thank you so much for the latest on that. It was suspected the field test said cocaine.
Yeah.
Now these more conclusive lab tests, yeah.
I would like to know blow by blow who is responsible for this.
Too soon.
There's no too soon on
Too
this.
soon?
No one was injured, as far as we know, and it's an illicit drug at the White House. Why can't you actually have a bit of fun with it?
I don't believe in fun.
No, he doesn't. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This is CNN News Central. Inside Politics is up next.
This is CNN, and this is
That's
why nobody's
CNN.
watching CNN. Don't you love that? I think it's just
Blow
it's
by
just a
blow.
little bit of illicit drug. Why can't you have fun with it? Boy, I want to hang out in her office. And what do you
Yeah.
think's going on in there?
Yeah.
That attitude,
I
of
mean-
course, only applies to Democrats.
Well, and that's the thing. If it would be the Trump cocaine scandal, it would be it would be a major national security breach. Let's be real. And so this is what I know we were talking about cocaine, but I bring this up again. What if it would have been another white powder, anthrax, anything like that, getting through the White House? This is a breach of security. The mere fact that they can't keep illegal drugs out of the White House, I think is a major issue. And yet the media is joking about it. We're seeing now that the House Oversight Panel, they're seeking a briefing from Secret Service on this cocaine on the White House.
They'll stonewall. That's what they do. It's 5:30.
WMAL-FM Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Welcome back to O'Connor and Company. I'm Derek Hunter, sitting in for vacationing Larry O'Connor with the one and only Mercedes Schlapp. Coming up at 7:05, we got Ben Weingarten of Real Clear Investigations. We got Ginny Gentles at 7:30 from IWF on the Pennsylvania governor's betrayal of a campaign. Not surprising. We'll get into that in a second. And then the great Tom Bevan from Real Clear Politics at 8:35. Mercedes Schlapp, as the parent of 700 to 800 children, or however many you got a small town's worth of children running around your house. You, and as a conservative, you have to be a fan of school choice. Anything that empowers parents is a good thing. And there was a rare, if you believe it, a rare Democrat up in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the governor, the newly elected governor up there, who also was a fan of school choice. Now, I don't know that I believe this or whatever, but I'll let Newsweek explain it. Right? Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro will veto his own campaign promise of school choice and abandon his push for private school vouchers in an effort to get the state budget passed through the legislature. On Wednesday, Shapiro acknowledged that, quote, the two chambers will not reach consensus at this time to enact his voucher proposal, also known as the Pennsylvania Award for Student Success, or the Pass Scholarship Program. Do you believe that Josh Shapiro was a fan of school choice, or that it was a campaign ploy to take the issue away from Republicans at a time when the American public were looking at the public education system and recoiling in horror about what was going on there?
Well, first of all, you have two girls. You're on track to have 5 girls like the Schlapps. Okay, so let's make this very clear. The other thing is they grow up. Like my oldest is 20 now, Derek. Can you believe it? I have a 20-year-old, and my youngest is 11. So
How
they
is that
do
even
grow
possible?
up.
You're only 23.
Huh?
How's that even possible?
I know, right? I know. I was a very young mother. But here's the deal. I think when Josh Shapiro it sounds like the backdoor deals. You know, it's like you could see him saying, listen, let's just put this in here for now on the private school vouchers. And then when we get to the budget, the Democrats, you say we don't want this, and then we just take it out. So this is, to me, shows incredible weakness. The fact that he will not stand up.
If you care about something deeply, is it the first thing you throw overboard the second you
What?
If you care about something deeply, is it the first
Yeah.
thing you throw overboard the
Yeah,
second
you
you
just-
meet any resistance?
Exactly. It's like, oops, I'm giving up.
Yeah.
White flag, and yeah. But here's the deal. This is going to hurt thousands of children, especially minority children that benefit from this school choice, this private school voucher, where they're going to be stuck in these failing public schools. And let me tell you, I've spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania. I kind of joke around. Every time I go up there to do campaigning, they're always like, you should just have a place here, because I just have spent so much time in that state. And one of the things that you've seen is this organic growth of parental rights groups. And they are mad. They are pissed at how the public schools have pushed this gender ideology and critical race theory. And it's really been something that you've seen more and more parent groups stand up and push back. So you're going to see a groundswell of these parents say, "This we've had enough." And now you have the betrayal coming from this Pennsylvania governor.
There's something telling about the Democrats' agenda that the second people are given an option out of it, they exercise it. And so the prospect of, say, voluntary union membership scares them. Like, oh,
yes,
unions are great. Well, if they're so great, then why don't people, what's wrong with the idea of voluntary membership? If they're great, people will notice that they're great. The public school system, if it were so wonderful, then people wouldn't try to flee it. Yet people are, every chance they're given, try to flee it. It doesn't matter, what color the parents are, what color the neighborhoods are, what the city is, deep blue or deep red. You announce a new charter school, and people start buying tents to sleep out on the streets just to get their kid's name in the hat on the prospect that they could have it drawn and get out of the current public school system. And Democrats, the second they see that, they go, yeah, we couldn't possibly let you out. Well, it'll take money away from the public school system. Yeah, that's kind of a good thing. The public school system sucks. The more you spend, the less you get. And that is not not the way to run a business. It's not the way to run a life. It's not the way to raise children. And it's telling that your customer base has to be forced to use your product in order for you to get customers.
Right. And not only use your product, but then you're stuck in a zip code. So if it's a bad school and you're living in that area, you're stuck in that school district. I want to bring up, when you look at the endorsements for Josh Shapiro when he ran for governor, of course, Philadelphia Federation of Teachers endorses Shapiro for governor. The unions have a hold of the governor and the Democrats, the teachers unions, which we know the teachers unions have failed our students and our parents time and time again. So, I think this raises a deeper issue here in terms of the unions having an influence in making sure that this private school voucher would not survive the budget.
Yeah, but it's very convenient because now the governor goes, oh, geez, I tried desperately.
I tried.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Just like back in the 90s when there was the surplus and the alleged surplus in Bill Clinton, he said he tried to find a way to give the tax money back to the people who were paid.
But I'm sure they have I'm sure they have a lot of these line items, including the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure there's a lot of money going to those programs in the Pennsylvania budget.
Well, the Pennsylvania budget probably buys about 30,000 copies of Genderqueer for every elementary school library up there, and that will make it through. That survives. You can always don't pay attention to what they say. Pay attention to what they do. Right?
Amen.
Isn't that the way it works in politics? But so sorry, Pennsylvania, little bait and switch. But don't worry, you've always got Senator Frankenstein up there to wait. No, never mind. I don't know what the heck happened. Maybe you need to spend more time up. Maybe you do need to buy that house up in Pennsylvania because that state needs some help, for crying out loud.
Those big cities. Talk about the fact that they figure out a way to win these elections. It's just amazing.
It's amazing how they get the vote of the dead people. Republicans really need to find a way to appeal to the dead. The Democrats have cornered.
We believe that the dead go to heaven. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them.
But they don't ever leave the voter rolls, so they at least vote absentee. It is 5:44. Mercedes, I didn't realize, that Joe Biden was the. Did you know that Joe Biden was the education president? I knew he was a president in need of an education. The thing you can't tell about Joe Biden, in fairness to Joe, is he's been dumb his whole life. Yes, he's just not a particularly bright man. But he's been senile for the last 10 years. So when he does or says something, you can't necessarily directly chalk it up to, oh, that's just Joe he's dumb. What do you expect? Because you have to factor in the possibility that it could be senility. With Jill, she's only ever been less than bright. Let's just say it that way. If you ever read her dissertation, man, that is something to behold.
Why would you have read her dissertation, Derek?
Because, you lose bets. Sometimes you make high-stakes bets, and sometimes you lose. But it is a grammatical nightmare. It is just this side of a first draft from a 10-year-old in an English composition course. It really is just bad. And you realize that essentially her EHD, education doctorate, she's not even a PhD, is just this side of honorary. They're like, okay, we know who she is. Just like Hunter, you could tell that whenever Hunter Biden filled out anything, he wrote Hunter and then Biden in all caps, just so you made and underlined it a couple times. Make sure you know who I am. Jill did the same thing. She got in as a sort of a nod to her husband, and they just kind of said, all right, whatever she does, just give her the damn thing. She's only going to inflict herself on a community college anyway, so what does it matter? She has declared on July 4th that her husband was the education president. Cut 5, go ahead.
I knew that Joe would always be the education president.
The education president. I'm sorry. Every time I hear her, she just sounds dumb, doesn't she? It's mean to say.
It's
probably,
pretty bad.
But she just sounds dumb, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I got to tell you, what I don't understand, Derek, is why don't, if this is such an important issue for this administration, then why doesn't Jill Biden take up the education as her first lady initiative. Each first lady takes on an issue. So for like Nancy Reagan, it was,
Drugs.
say no to drugs. For Melania Trump, it was be best. So you all take up these important issues
For Hillary Clinton,
and you
it was
highlight them,
bribe
bring
me.
awareness.
I mean, they all have their own things.
Right, but Jill, what has Jill done?
Biden's cause? What is it?
I don't think she has a cause. I mean, I think that. I know. Babysitting Joe Biden. That's her cause. She's the babysitter.
Making sure the puree is thin enough so that Joe can sip it through a straw.
I mean, look, I got to tell you something. When you look at the fact that she spoke at this National Education Association, that these are the same folks that kept the schools shut for a prolonged period of time, where they push this propaganda, this queer propaganda over and over again to our young children, focus more on gender than we are on making sure that their math and reading scores increase. I mean, it's disgusting. It's gross, the direction of our education system, and especially in the public schools. And so this is for her to say that he's the education president. He's done nothing. Zero, nada for education, for improving the lives of our children.
Well,
that hasn't happened under this
administration. If he'd done
administration.
something, it would be terrible. So in that sense, him doing nothing is a step in the right direction, is better than the alternative. But Governor Glenn Youngkin, Virginia over there, was in Manassas, and he was on Fox and Friends talking about this, and I assume choking back laughter, he addressed this. Cut 6, go ahead.
Well, I hate to say that I think she may be the only person who believes that. I think the vast majority of Americans believe that Joe Biden has so under-supported and under-prepared our kids for what we're dealing with. I mean, listen, schools were closed for an extended period of time because Joe Biden thought schools should be closed unnecessarily. And now we're seeing a learning loss across the nation that's unprecedented. We've lost decades and decades of progress. And here in Virginia, we, in fact, saw, because of bad policies from progressive liberals from years ago, before the pandemic, and then schools being shut for an unnecessary period of time, Virginia's kids were top of the nation in learning loss. Our fourth graders had the largest learning loss in math and in English. We are working hard to close that gap. It is a huge effort. We need more teachers. We need more specialized help. We have micro grants now for Virginia's kids. We're working hard to reestablish excellence and expectations and give kids the kind of support they need. And it hadn't come from Joe Biden. And I think, again, the vast majority of Americans understand that Joe Biden has not been the education president, but counter. In fact, he's listened so much to the teachers' unions, and the teachers' unions have dictated so much of what's going on that they've forgotten who the kids belong to.
Randy Weingarten has spent more time with Joe Biden than I suspect Kamala Harris has over the American Federation of Teachers. Honestly, it's tough to know which one's a less pleasant experience, but it does seem as though Randy Weingarten at AFT has had more of an impact on policy than the vice president does.
Right. And you forget, Randy went off to Ukraine as well. That was one of her solidarity moments.
The problem was she came back. That's the problem. We got to step away for a second. It's 5:53.